My name is Olivia Bennett, and if you walked into my life today, you'd probably think I had it all figured out. From the outside, that's true. I live in a house with ceilings so high that my voice echoes when I call out to Alexa. The kind of house with polished wood floors that reflect your heels back at you, and a view from the balcony that stretches far into the city skyline. Success looks good on me, at least that's what people say. But every story has layers, and mine began with a door slamming shut. This morning, as I slipped into my ivory silk blouse and fastened the delicate gold chain around my neck, my phone buzzed across the marble counter. The name flashing on the screen made my chest tighten. Danielle Carter. My cousin. Or at least the girl who once stood by, smirking, as my own family stripped me of something so small, but so defining my bedroom. Her message was short, almost casual. Hey Liv, we're in town. Can we stop by? I let out a soft laugh, sharp with irony. Funny how life works. Years ago, they took away my space, my comfort, my place in the world. Today, they were asking if they could enter my home. I twisted the diamond ring on my finger, the one I bought myself when my company signed its first $1 million contract, and glanced around the living room. Everything here had a story, a struggle, a sacrifice, a secret. And now, the very people who once dismissed me were about to step inside it. I was 17 the night it happened. 17, old enough to dream big, but still young enough to believe that family was supposed to protect you. It was a Thursday, late summer. I remember because the air smelled of fresh-cut grass, and my window was cracked open to let in the cicadas' hum. My room wasn't much. Pale yellow walls, a twin bed with a quilt my grandmother had sewn, a little corkboard filled with college brochures and magazine clippings of places I wanted to see someday. It was mine, my safe space. Until it wasn't. I came home from my part-time shift at the diner, sweaty from refilling coffee cups all evening, only to find my bedroom door wide open. Danielle and her sister Madison were dragging in their suitcases, laughing like it was some kind of joke. My posters were torn down, my books stacked into a cardboard box on the floor. What are you doing? I asked, my throat tight. My mother's voice came sharp from behind me. Olivia, don't start. Your cousins need the space. You can sleep in the basement for now. The basement. Damp, unfinished, filled with old furniture and spiders. I looked at her, searching for some sign she was kidding. But her eyes were flat, like she'd already decided my comfort didn't matter. My father didn't even look up from the newspaper. The lump in my throat burned. I tried to argue, told them I needed my room, that I had school, that it wasn't fair. But my words shook, and Danielle smirked as she tossed her hair over her shoulder, already arranging her things on my dresser like it had always been hers. That night, I sat on the cold basement floor with my box of belongings, my hands trembling. I felt invisible, disposable. But in that darkness, my grandmother's voice came back to me. She had passed away a year earlier, but before she did, she gave me a leather-bound journal and whispered, "When the world pushes you out, don't break. Build your own door." I clutched that journal to my chest. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. If my family believed I was small enough to be shoved into a basement, then I'd grow too big for their house to hold. I wouldn't just find another room. One day, I'd own the whole house. The night I left my parents' house, I carried nothing more than that journal, a duffel bag of clothes, and $72 I'd saved from my diner shifts. It wasn't glamorous. I cried as I walked down the sidewalk, not knowing where I was heading, but knowing I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. My first stop was a tiny studio above a laundromat. The rent was barely affordable, the walls smelled of detergent, and the radiator hissed like an angry cat every night. Still, it was mine. I taped my grandmother's words inside the closet door. Build your own door. That became my prayer. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at a bookstore. My hands were constantly raw from steaming milk and unpacking boxes. Some nights, I ate nothing but ramen noodles and stale muffins customers left behind. But every dollar I saved went into a little envelope labeled future. Then came my first real break. At the bookstore, I met Eleanor Shaw, a retired businesswoman with silver hair always pinned in a neat bun. She'd stop in weekly, ask me about my classes, and one evening, she noticed me scribbling business ideas in my journal during a slow shift. "You've got a sharp mind, Olivia," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Don't waste it shelving books forever. What's your plan?" No one had ever asked me that before, not like they really believed I had one. I told her about my dream of starting a design agency, about how I wanted to help small businesses look professional without spending a fortune. Eleanor smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. She offered me mentorship, even lent me her old laptop so I could design mock-ups. She'd been the first person, outside of my grandmother, to believe I was capable of more. It wasn't easy. I spent nights teaching myself Photoshop and marketing strategies from YouTube tutorials, falling asleep at 3 a.m. with my laptop still warm on my legs. I pitched ideas to strangers, got rejected dozens of times, and questioned myself constantly. But slowly, little victories came. My first client was a local bakery. They paid me $150 to design their logo. I remember staring at the check in disbelief, clutching it like it was worth $1 million. Then came a hair salon, a thrift shop, a yoga studio. Each project led to another, and my reputation grew. I lived simply. No fancy clothes, no big updates on social media. When family asked, I'd shrug and say, "I'm keeping busy." I didn't want them to know, not yet. My success felt like a secret garden I was tending in silence, away from their judgment. Years passed, and my little agency became something real. I hired 2 interns, then a full team. We signed bigger contracts, bought better equipment, moved into a proper office downtown. But through it all, I kept the same chipped coffee mug from my laundromat studio, the same journal filled with dreams. Those reminded me of where I came from and how far I was going. Because one day, I promised myself, the world would see. The knock came just after noon on Saturday. The kind of knock that carries history in it. I already knew who it was. Danielle's text had warned me. But still, my stomach tightened as I walked across the polished oak floor toward the front door. When I pulled it open, there they were. Danielle, her sister Madison, and behind them, my parents. My mother clutched her handbag like it held the last of her dignity, and my father's eyes darted nervously across the porch, unable to settle on me. "Olivia," my mother breathed, forcing a smile. "It's been so long. Has it?" I asked, my voice calm, steady. "Come in." They stepped inside, and immediately, I saw it. The widening of their eyes, the subtle parting of lips, the silence that fell as they took it all in. The foyer opened into a living room bathed in natural light from the tall windows. A grand piano gleamed in the corner. The walls carried art pieces I had collected from local artists I'd supported. On the shelves, framed photos of my team, my first office, and my travels to places I'd once only clipped from magazines. Every detail spoke of a life built carefully, deliberately. Madison whispered, "This place is wow." Danielle's jaw tightened as she spun slowly, her eyes landing on the marble kitchen island, the gold accents, the carefully arranged orchids on the counter. My father cleared his throat. "So, you've done well for yourself." I let the words hang in the air before replying. "I've done more than well. I built everything you see here from nothing. From the basement you pushed me into." Silence. Heavy, choking silence. My mother's face flushed, her eyes darting to the floor. Danielle laughed lightly, trying to break the tension. "Well, I mean that all worked out, right? Look at you now. Maybe we gave you the push you needed." Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I walked to the mantel above the fireplace and lifted the leather-bound journal, my grandmother's. I held it up, my voice steady. "This," I said, "is what pushed me. Not your cruelty. Not your dismissal." Her words reminded me I was worth more than a basement. And I proved it. I turned, letting my gaze sweep over all of them. I don't just live here. I own this house. Every tile, every window, every brick, it's mine. The shock was visible. My father's mouth opened, then closed again. My mother's eyes glistened, though whether it was pride or shame, I couldn't tell. Madison shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. And Danielle, always so smug, looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I let the silence linger, savoring the shift in power. For years, I had been the girl no one believed in, the one they shoved aside. Now they were standing in my house, on my terms. Finally, my father spoke, his voice low. Olivia, we didn't know. We didn't see what you were capable of. I nodded slowly. No, you didn't.
You chose not to.
And that's why this moment feels the way it does.
Because now you see me.
And you can't unsee it. The room stayed quiet, filled only with the hum of the air conditioning and the faint tick of the antique clock on the wall. They were speechless, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't. I had built my own door, and they had just walked through it. I let them sit in my living room, on the cream leather couches they clearly didn't feel comfortable on. My mother perched at the edge, her handbag still clutched in her lap like armor. Danielle crossed her legs and fiddled with her phone, though I noticed her eyes darting around, cataloging every sign of success she could find. My father sat stiffly, staring at the floor. I poured myself a glass of water and sat opposite them. For once, they were the ones waiting for me to speak. You're probably wondering why I even let you in? I began. It's simple. I wanted you to see, to understand the cost of what you did and the power I gained from it. My mother's lips trembled. Olivia, we made mistakes. Mistakes? I cut her off gently but firmly. Taking my room and giving it away wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to show me I didn't matter. You chose to let me feel disposable. The silence was thick, and I let it linger before leaning forward. But here's the thing, I'm not that girl anymore. And if you want to be in my life now, things will be different. On my terms. Danielle scoffed softly. Terms? Seriously? Yes, I said, meeting her gaze head-on.
Terms.
Boundaries. Conditions. I turned first to my mother. If you want a relationship with me, you need to stop pretending nothing happened. Own it. Admit that you failed me when I needed you most. I don't need excuses, I need honesty. Her eyes welled with tears, but she nodded slowly. Then I looked at my father. You don't get to stay silent anymore. You spent years hiding behind your newspaper while I begged for your support. If you want to be part of my life, you need to speak up. Tell me what you actually feel. And mean it. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Finally, I turned to Danielle and Madison. As for you two, if you're hoping to benefit from me now, forget it. You don't get handouts. Not from me. If you want anything, help, advice, even respect, you're going to have to earn it. Build something of your own instead of taking what isn't yours. Prove you can stand on your own 2 feet. Danielle shifted uncomfortably, her smirk gone. Madison stayed quiet, biting her lip. I leaned back, letting my words sink in. I'm not shutting the door on any of you, but it won't ever be the same as before. I won't be the girl shoved into a basement while you laugh upstairs. I set the rules now, and if you can't respect them, then you don't belong here. The room was still. The clock ticked on. For once, they were the ones facing the weight of my conditions, my boundaries. And for the first time, I felt no guilt, only clarity. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. My family didn't vanish, but they didn't storm back into my life either. They lingered, tentative, like guests who weren't sure if they'd overstayed their welcome. My mother began calling once a week, her voice softer, stripped of its old sharpness. She didn't pretend anymore. She apologized, clumsily at first, but with a kind of rawness I hadn't heard before. My father started writing letters. Actual letters, in his blocky handwriting, confessing the pride he never voiced, the fear that had kept him silent. They weren't perfect, but they were attempts. Even Danielle, to my surprise, sent me a message late one night. I don't know how you did it, Liv, but I want to try for myself. Any advice? It wasn't humility yet, but it was the first crack in her armor. I wasn't naive. I knew these shifts wouldn't erase the past, nor would they fully mend the wounds. But watching them take even the smallest steps toward honesty and growth felt like reclaiming pieces of the girl they had once pushed aside. One evening, As I sat at my desk reviewing contracts, I noticed the leather-bound journal lying open beside me. Its pages were filled now. Plans, sketches, ideas, victories. My grandmother's words, written in faded ink on the very first page, still stared back at me. When the world pushes you out, don't break. Build your own door. I traced the words with my fingertip, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. She had believed in me when no one else did. And tonight, as I looked around the home I had built, the life I had created, I felt her presence more than ever. I wasn't that 17-year-old girl anymore, shivering on a basement floor. I was a woman who had taken pain and turned it into purpose, rejection, and turned it into resolve. And as I walked through the halls of my house, the one they once thought I'd never deserve, I whispered it out loud. Not for them, not for revenge, but for myself. They took my room once, but now I own the house.